Welcome to Badaboom. I'm Chris. On this episode, we have on Michael Kingston, writer of Massive and Mass Republic's Vampiro, Rockabilly Apocalypse, a new series starring legendary luchador Vampiro. Kingston talks about what it is like crafting a story around Vampiro, their own history in the wrestling business, and what readers can expect when Rockabilly Apocalypse hits shops on October 16th. Hey, Mike, how you been?
I'm doing good. Been real busy. Just got back from GalaxyCon San Jose, and
Yeah.
I've had a pretty intense convention schedule this year and publication schedule on top of that. So
Yeah,
just
and it's only going to get busier the rest of the year. For I'm getting to talk to you because with Mass Republic and Massive, you have Vampiro coming out later this year.
mhm.
And what's that experience been like? How did you get involved? What was the experience like?
Um, I've known Kevin forever. I think we just travel in the same circles, doing sort of I think anybody who does sort of non-WWE wrestling content kind of knows each other.
Yeah.
And we've split space at San Diego Comic Con for I don't know 6 or 7 years now, probably. Um, and I just always been kind of bugging him to let me do stuff. And this Vampiro project came up, and he gave me a shot at it, and it's been one of the most fun things that I've ever had a chance to write. So.
Yeah, and it looks fun. What was great is sort of recently Luchaverse Catalyst #1
Mhm.
came out. And that was fun to kind of like dive into that and see what um Master Republic is able to do, especially with that world. You know what I mean? I think that what's really cool about luchadors, they have like this extra lore that wrestlers, like at least American wrestlers, don't have. It's almost like they carry their characters with them in a lot of ways. And I think it really lends itself to that. So what was it like to work on it and sort of build the legend of Vampiro?
I mean, it's been amazing. So I've been making comics for 15 years, and most of the comics I write are wrestling oriented. I mean, I write Headlocked, I write Tales from the Road, I wrote some WWE comics, whatever. And so I've never really done anything sort of outside of that, but obviously capable. And I had, so I basically just got an opportunity to sort of make this as weird as possible. And Vamp is a pretty eclectic dude on top of that. So just you spend some time talking to him and whatever, and then I've got 20 some odd years of reading comics and whatever, and just it was just an opportunity to really just cut loose and have fun and do something sort of outside of the wrestling sphere.
Yeah, and sort of talking about cutting loose, what was it like working with Vampiro to create this story?
He's like I said, man, he's a real interesting guy. Like super, like I've been around wrestlers for years. I've collaborated with probably 40 different wrestlers on Tales from the Road stories and stuff and whatever. And like there's always those certain guys that just have uh a level of charisma, like just a personal level of charisma. Like they're not trying, like it's just they just have it, whatever that is. And Vamp is 100% that dude. Like when you're around that guy, you're like, you want that guy to like you. You want that guy to, to think that you're cool or whatever. Cause like I mean, he came to my San Diego Comic Con booth this year. And I mean, you can probably find some pictures on our Instagram and stuff. But I mean, that dude came in like a zoot suit. I mean, he looked like a hitman for the Pope. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So,
And
I mean, he's just and then on top of that, he's got some, he's into all kinds of weird stuff, you know, not like, just into weirdness in general, I
yeah.
think, and whatever. So like every conversation is unusual, but like in the best possible way. And he's just a cool dude. So it's been cool to get to hang out with him and spend time with him and stuff. And I think we're going to do more shows coming up, hopefully to promote the book. And just, I think he wants to do more Comic Cons in general, and I do a bunch. So
Yeah.
it makes sense to hit the road with the man.
Yeah, and I saw some of that, like Mass Republic was sharing a lot of like what was going on at San Diego Comic Con, and it looked like, fans are really responding and having a good time. Like obviously he's having a moment, he's had some really big like milestones recently in terms of like his reach and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of like the perfect time in a lot of ways. And with it
Yeah.
coming out sort of like later in the year, you have sort of it lining up with like spooky season. So you can kind of like
All
I think
right.
sometimes like with those kind of books, you're like, why is this out in February? So it's cool to have something like that come out like later in the year.
And what's interesting about it is it
Mhm.
started out as an action figure tie-in.
Mhm.
Like they wanted to package a comic book with this action figure because they wanted to do like the Rockabilly Vampiro character, but like character had never existed. So they asked me to make this comic, and I just made it as weird as possible. And then some other people saw it, and they're kind of interested in developing it further or whatever. And I was like, oh damn, now I got to finish this thing. There's a certain freedom in writing something that you don't have to end. But
Yeah.
then I was like, oh no. But it's been super super fun, and then just to work with Vamp and to have work with Raphael Galore on colors. I mean, like having a cover by Raphael Galore on something that I wrote is like real bucket list stuff. So
That's dope. And like I think it is kind of satisfying, I guess, where you work on something that you thought was probably going to be a little bit smaller, like a one-off thing that people maybe read, or if they ever open that action figure, and now like
mhm.
people read it and they're like, hey, we need more of this. And in terms of like building that out, like what's the current like plan? Is it going to be like a 5, 6 issue, or is it going to be longer, maybe ongoing?
So this arc, so the idea is obviously with Vamp being a vampire and immortal or whatever, we can
Yeah.
basically put that character wherever we want. So the current Rockabilly Apocalypse arc is supposed to be 10 issues, but the first one is double sized and the last one is double sized. So about 12 issues full of content. And it's some wild stuff. I mean, I'm not a normal dude by any stretch either, but I was really able to sort of just just trying to play off of Vamp and whatever, and just trying to make, one of my favorite comic books of all time was Preacher, and it was just super super weird, and you can probably see some of the influence in it. I always tell people the book is Preacher meets Cannonball Run, because everybody's got a vehicle, and there's just crazy stuff, and we're in the the American Southwest, and it's it's uh it's super super fun, and I mean how I started it isn't it just keeps developing. It just keeps getting
Mm.
layers of stuff, and then so there's probably a likelihood at some point that I'll come back to these characters even after this arc. Um, but I think Vamp's got some real ideas about where he wants to take the next one, and I have a biochemistry degree, so like
Mm.
I'm a research guy by nature, so like I love researching stuff. So like, I mean, if we go to a different time period and we want to get weird or whatever, I mean, I'll dig into whatever I can, and we'll get as uh we'll get as wild as we can. And I think that's, and that's the point of comics. I mean, that's why I write comics, I think, because you
Mm.
can, there's no limit, there's no budget. I mean, there's a budget
Mhm.
obviously, but there's
Yeah.
no budget to what you're drawing, you know what I mean? If it's a conversation about two people, drinking a glass of wine, or a interstellar, fight on flying space pyramids or whatever, like it's the same thing. So, I mean, so you can kind of tell whatever kind of story you want, and you can go in whatever directions you want. You don't have to worry about how do we film this? What are the effects like? Whatever. That can be somebody else's problem down the road, hopefully. But
Yeah.
in the short term, you can just be like, let's just get crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of comics, as you said. I think like some of the things that I've like don't like about some modern comics, you could sometimes feel like, hey, like, are you limiting yourself because you think this is going to get filmed one day? Like, sometimes you
Hmm.
could read that. And I think I always love when creators let loose and sort of like unpack and allow themselves to sort of explore the medium versus being like, all right, like, I got to make this adaptable so that
Hmm.
when, one day, hopefully Netflix adapts this, that it's easy to. But I like to read things and be like, hey, this is unfilmable. And that's great.
And I think that's,
Yeah.
that's the best part about comics. I mean, some of the best comics, like, I mean, I don't think you could ever don't think you could ever film Planetary, you know what I mean, or
Yeah.
make that a series because it's just so just big in scope, but like so different too, and
Mm,
just stuff like that. Like I've always liked that kind of stuff that sort of pushes the boundaries of what you can do, but also just I don't know. When I grew up, I'm not
mm,
exactly young, but like I
mm,
mean, TV used to be weird.
mm,
Like there just used to be the weirdest stuff that would happen, and
mm,
like I don't know, everything is just so safe now on some level. And
mm,
I mean, somewhat, and just so cultured and protected and whatever.
mm.
And there's like 5,000 eyes have seen it, and I
Yeah.
think I like the idea of just making something just it's just something from a handful of creators, and we're just making something weird and fun, and we hope that everybody can kind of enjoy, have as much fun reading it as we had putting it together.
Yeah, you hope that people pick it up, they open it, they have a good time versus like again, sort of thinking about like, that corporate structure of like, hey, this person has to see it, merchandising has to see it. I'm sure there's some level to that of like, hey, like you want it to like work and stuff like that, but not at the level of some other things, which I think is great because, like I said, the books I'm reading like now that I really enjoy and why I really loved, Luchaverse was that it was something that was like free, weird in some ways, scary, and really tried to explore different things versus like, hey, like let's make this IP thing so that eventually, it could be a theme park attraction and,
Sure.
sell toys and all that. And I'm sure, like, again, like everyone wants to be successful and make money, which is, the name of the game and how you're able to do it in the future and stuff. But I think the way you get there is making good comics, making good stories.
I agree. I mean,
Mm,
I've been making comics for 15 years, and I publish them myself. I mean, because I don't
mm,
want to answer to anybody. And I create comics with wrestlers, and we do, what I do with Tales from the Road is somewhat unconventional. I mean, it's probably
mm,
not what 99% of the world would do if they had a chance to collaborate with a wrestler on a comic book. But for me, I mean, comics is a grind. They're a grind to
yeah.
make. Everybody that makes comics, it's a grind, but you do it because you love it. So I'm gonna kill myself to make books. I want to make the shit I want to make, and ideally, I'd rather make the shit I want to make and find the people, go drag the people who I know want to read it and put it in front of them, than just making something that I think is going to be safe and popular or whatever, and just throwing it out into the world and then letting people come and find it. So
Yeah.
I am all about like just making that story that only you can tell.
Yeah. And for you, what's it been like sort of, obviously you've been traveling, working hard, hitting the con circuit, and it's going to get even busier as time goes with this project. What's it been like to interact with people, with fans, and sort of put something like this, like Vampiro, in front of them? And what's the response been like?
It's been great. I mean, it's been people have been excited about it, I think, because I'm excited about it. So when I talk to people, I think there's a certain enthusiasm. I mean, I'm excited about everything I make, but I'm super, super excited about Vampiro. And I mean, to a certain degree, there's a little bit of a nerve-wracking element to it because I haven't had a book in comic stores in a long time. I mean, I've been making comics every year, but I don't necessarily put them through Diamond and put them through stores. I have a fan base that knows where to get my stuff. And so I've never really done that. So it's a little nerve-wracking on some level to think about it that way, but it's fine. Like I mean the overall response has been great. I mean, it was great at San Diego. I just a ton of people that were super stoked about it at San Jose this weekend. So and I for me, I love being out on the road. I love traveling. I love seeing people. I love connecting. Um, so conventions, I mean, they can be a giant pain, but they're also so much fun. I mean, I got to hang out with Weird Al Yankovic in the green room this weekend. I mean,
Oh,
you know,
nice.
you can't trade that for anything. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, on top of that, though, you just meet people, and I don't know. I've helped a lot of people make comics of their own because people come to me as a guy who made his own stuff. I do panels about making your own comics at shows, and there's been a number of people that I've helped. At least they're encouraged. I don't know. I want to say inspire because I feel like that's too haughty. But like there are
Mm.
people that have looked at what I've done and decided that they could do that. And and that's cool. That's something that I take a lot of pride in. So I don't know. This has been the best year. I mean, this is my 15th year making comics, I think, maybe 16. And but this has definitely been the best year by far. So I'm stoked for people to get Vampiro into their hands and to see what they think about it. And I I hope that we get to
Mhm.
we can finish the whole series because it's super super fun, and I think everybody's gonna like it.
Yeah. And I think it is the right word. I think inspirational. I think it's really great. Like when we had a couple years where we didn't have those conventions, and I think it's important to meet people in person and meet creators. And I think in a lot of times, like when people see like a creator like that's grinding it out, like that's in it for 15 years without really having to go through the typical route, is very much inspiring and be like, hey, like I can make the things I want to make versus like, hey, I have to play this, the system or get
Hmm.
in. It's like, hey, if you want to make comics, meet an artist, or if you're an artist yourself, put something together. You could self-publish it. There's Webtoon, there's all these different things now, and you could do it.
Yeah. And those are the panels that I run because like
Yeah.
the people come up to me all the time and they're like, oh, I had this idea for a book and it was just like The Walking Dead, but they did that already. And I'm like, yeah, but you
Yeah.
know what? I mean, Walking Dead's great comics. I have all of them right on my bookcase over
Yeah.
here. It ain't Shakespeare. You know what I mean? Like it's good. They're good, but it's not within someone's capabilities to have taken that idea and taken it in a completely different direction and made it great. You know what I mean? But the difference is he did it. Kirkman did it, and that was it. And so many people are so afraid to fail at something, and I think some of that is just it's just like bullshit masculine stuff where you don't want
Yeah.
to look weak or whatever. But like people are afraid to suck, and you have to give yourself grace, and you have to give yourself permission to suck. And everything you read, everything I go back and read from 15 years ago, I'm like, oh Jesus. But you know what I mean? Like it's part of the
Yeah.
process. And I always try to tell people, like making comics has been the greatest joy of my life. And almost every good thing that's happened to me in the past 15 years had come from the fact that I make comic books about wrestling. And I'm friends with wrestlers, and I've been backstage at wrestling shows, and I've been in luxury boxes, and I've met famous people, and I've helped people make their own comics, and people have read my comics, and I've developed so many just incredible relationships among readers and creators and wrestlers and whatever. And I would encourage everybody to try to maybe it's not comics, but just to make your thing. I mean, everybody's got a thing,
Yeah.
you should just do it.
Yeah, and that's really important. Like you said, I think, people can take ideas, and what really makes it singular is your voice. To give you an example, I was watching Aliens last night, and you're like, hey, like how Ridley Scott was able to do his first one, and then James Cameron to do the second one. It's like, hey, it's the same idea, it's Aliens, but they take it in two completely different directions. And
Sure.
they're almost completely different movies. Yeah, the characters and this is the same, but I think it's important to understand that like the thing that separates it is not the pieces in place. It's really your voice and how you put them in.
And that's what I always tell people. I mean, like, you can make the safe thing, but everybody's making the safe thing. Or you can be like, oh, I want to do my version of Superman, but Superman's existed for all these years and there's 100 different versions of it. So I mean, maybe you have a story in you that is different, and it's always harder to it's harder to sell something different, it's harder to push something different, but it's definitely way more fun to make something different. And I don't know, I think that the one thing that everybody can feel in a comic is passion, right? Or just in any sort of entertainment, right? And I always use the example of Deadpool, right? The Wolverine Origins Deadpool played by Ryan Reynolds versus the current version of Deadpool that's wildly popular and whatever adheres to sort of what the character conventions are. One was made for money and one was made for passion. And you can feel that as a fan. So I feel like as long as you're putting your passion into it, that you can't go wrong.
Yeah. And, to sort of cap off, like what do you hope readers get from reading Vampiro?
Honestly, I just want them to have fun. It's a fun book. It's a weird book, but like to me, a lot of like to me, comics have become way too serious in a lot of aspects. And, like sometimes, like I grew up reading superheroes, and sometimes I'll pick up some superhero books now, and they're just impenetrable. Like you get back in the day, right? Like I was 6 years old and picked up a copy of Spider-Man off a spinner rack in a drugstore and became a fan for life. But like if I was 6 years old or 8 years old or whatever, and I picked up a book that has an infographic at the beginning that you need to read to understand the book, like this is too much. Like this is a fun this is a fun story. It's a simple story. I mean, there's some ideas we kick around and whatever, but I mean, it's just there really just to be a good time, and that's that's what I think. That's what I feel like is missing from comics sometimes.
Well, thank you for coming on. I'm excited. Like I said, I'm totally bought in on all the Luchaverse and Master Republic comics with Massive. And Vampiro is shipping out in October. So, if you're ready for spooky season, get your orders in now. It should be in either Lunar or previews. If you go to Massive's website, you could also pre-order it. And where can people find you, Mike?
All my social media is Headlocked Comic. It's one word. It's all me. And I'll be in North Dakota for BakenCon. I'll be in Madison, Wisconsin the week after that, and Baltimore Comic Con, Bangor Comic Con, New York Comic Con. Hopefully with Vampiro. Hopefully trying to get him out there for it because that's when the book
Awesome.
drops.
I'll be at New
So
York Comic Con, so hopefully I could
okay,
get my copy signed.
yeah, 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 by all means.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got a pretty heavy convention schedule. I drop in another book, one of my books before Vampiro, about a guy that trains Bigfoot to wrestle in Portland in 1995 or 1985, called Friday Night Bigfoot. And yeah, it's a hectic schedule, but it's the best time. So it's the best time to be busy and to be just making books that you love. So
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on. And with that, bada boom.
bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Badaboom podcast. Keep the conversation going with Chris and I on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can find us on all these places at Badaboom Podcast. Get into the comments on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you like about the show or what you'd like to hear from us in the future. Until next time, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Thanks for listening.